And all right, it is 3 o'clock, and means it is time for our Lakeside online program. We're going to jump right in today because we have so much to share with you during this hour program. So first of all, thank you again for joining us. A couple of housekeeping things. We do ask that you keep on mute unless you've been asked to speak or something that will keep the background noise from me and distraction to anyone else. We also encourage, if you want to look at use gallery view, that will help you with being able to see the person who is speaking. And I am wondering if I am froze. Oh my goodness.
I can hear you okay, Jeannie. I can hear you.
Did you hear me okay? Perfect. You know, Zoom can be a lonely place sometimes where when you're talking, you look out on the screen, you think, oh my goodness, can everyone hear me okay? Because my screen does look a little frozen, but we're going to go ahead and continue. All right, now with those housekeeping things away, we are ready to jump into today's program, and it is a treat. It's the Behind the Curtain program featuring Daniel Meyer and about the Lakeside Symphony Orchestra, and we are grateful to have you here. I am Jeannie Fleming Gifford. I am the Vice President of Programming at Lakeside Chautauqua. It's been an honor to serve in this position for just over the last year. And I'm also your host today. So I'm going to be talking a lot with Daniel Meyer. And if you've been with us before, I usually, when I introduce Hannah, I have shared 3 things. And I thought, well, I'm the host today, so I'm going to share some things that maybe you don't know about me other than I work for Lakeside Chautauqua. So my 3 things today are actually the orchestra has a special place in my heart. I was a French horn player. I actually played with the Akron Youth Symphony Orchestra under the direction of Keith Lockhart, who is now with the Boston Pops. And that was when I was in high school, which was a pretty exciting time. Another fun thing I love to share about my orchestral journey was I actually was the director of education for the Columbus Symphony Orchestra early on in my nonprofit management career. And the third thing I love to share is that just about 3 years ago, I co-authored a book called Symphony, which is a children's book and a play on homonyms to introduce children to the symphony orchestra. So there are 3 fun things there. Now, those 3 things compare nothing to our guest today, Daniel Meyer. And I'd encourage you to visit danielmeyermusic.com. I'll drop that in the chat so you can get that website there, because it has so much information there about Daniel's his journey as a conductor, as a music director, as an artistic director, as a composer. We are so blessed that he came to Lakeside Chautauqua. It's our music director and conductor in 2019. And I was lucky enough to hear, the orchestra as a guest before taking the formal role as vice president of programming. But I'll tell you what, this last August, sitting in Hoover Auditorium and listening to the orchestra, he's just taken it to new heights. And we are so blessed to have him part of this. In addition to his work with Lakeside Chautauqua, Daniel serves as the music director of Erie Philharmonic. He's the artistic director of the Westmoreland Symphony, which is also in Pennsylvania. And he also is the music director of Cleveland's Blue Water Chamber Orchestra, which we'll be talking a little bit about today, because they will be coming to Lakeside Chautauqua as well this year. And as I mentioned, he has been with us since 2019. So with that, we are going to jump in. Daniel, welcome. It is great to see you today.
It's great to be here. Thank you, Jeannie.
And you are Zooming today from Pennsylvania, is that right?
Beautiful, sunny Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, which are words that you don't string in the same sentence in the winter. We get a lot of gray here, and it's been an unusually mild winter here in Pittsburgh, which I think it's been for many of you. But I would say it's a real treat to actually get to see some blue skies today.
Yeah, well, Daniel, you should feel pretty home there with those skies, because I know you're a native of Cleveland. And so I think we have about as many sunny days as Pittsburgh, especially from October through April. I also didn't share that you were a graduate of Denison University, and then also was at the Cincinnati Conservatory of Music as well. And so can you tell us a little bit more about your background? I kind of gave kind of some of the basics, but give us a little bit about your journey. How did you even get interested in becoming, a conductor, a music director? Start us back a long time ago.
Way back.
Yeah,
Well, I mean, I can go back as far as diapers if you want. I mean, my mother is was a vocal music teacher in the public schools in Brunswick, Ohio, which is a suburb of Cleveland. It's in Medina County. And she was a teacher for 30 years. And I'm the oldest of 4 kids in my family. And all 4 of us started off singing and playing piano with mom, sitting right beside her at the piano keyboard when we were still in diapers, essentially. And then we each got to take formal piano lessons from kindergarten. And then this is in that glorious time when the public schools had thriving instrumental programs. So I remember very distinctly in 3rd grade, the whole class got to march down to this room, and on all these tables were spread out beautiful stringed instruments, cellos, violas, violins, and we got to pick them up and play them and pluck them and draw a bow across the string. And of course, the string teacher got a hold of the kids 1 year before the band teacher did. So 3rd grade was strings, 4th grade was wind and brass and percussion instruments. And that day I ran home and said, Mom, I want to take the violin. So she let me start violin lessons in the public schools in 3rd grade. And I'd say about a year or 2 later, I started taking private lessons. But my introduction to playing an orchestral instrument was definitely through the public schools, through when I was growing up. And then, of course, singing was always a huge part of my training and my background. I sang in children's choirs and sang in church, and I sang in the Cleveland Singing Angels, which is a performing chorus based in Cleveland. They're still active to this day. And incidentally, that was my first exposure to Lakeside, was through the Singing Angels, because we were invited to get on a bus and ride over to Lakeside and give a performance in Hoover Auditorium. And as a little kid, to step into Hoover and see that enormous performing arts space and to get to perform there made a huge impression. I mean, that's the thing I remember most was how impressive Hoover was, and what a joy it was to perform in a space like that. And I must have been only 8 or 9 years old, I think, when I was involved with Singing Angels and sang at Lakeside. So those are very distant memories, but it's fun to think that I actually had a very early Lakeside experience before this position and this opportunity even came onto my radar screen. So that was fun. So fast forward, learning violin, piano, singing, all of that was a joy for me. I loved doing it. I got involved in youth orchestras. I got involved in youth choirs. I sang in the Cleveland Orchestra chorus in the summer when I was in high school with my mother. We kind of made that a mother-father bonding experience. We had a lot of fun doing that. And I actually matriculated at Denison as a pre-law or government major. I was interested in getting into law, getting into politics, and my advisor said, look, with all of this musical background, you should at least declare a major while you're here. That way you can get your lessons covered as part of your tuition. And I thought that was pretty sensible advice. And I wanted to get involved in the student ensembles as well. So that was really smart advice. And within a year, I had already switched my major, decided that I wanted to make music my life, and was composing music a lot, and finally got a chance to conduct my own music at Denison. And that really was the moment that I realized that conducting was for me. It ticked all the boxes, as it were, in terms of just the thrill of standing up in front of your peers and leading a piece of music, the thrill of hearing your own music performed by your peers, the thrill of how difficult it is from an intellectual standpoint to absorb a score and then lead it in front of musicians. And then ultimately, it's just a wonderful emotional experience to be able to have all the sound wash over you and to have a very important part or an important role in shaping how the music is made. So at that point, at Denison, the great thing about a small liberal arts college is that you can shift gears. You're not stuck in a major and you have to see it through, or you're never going to graduate. I was lucky that I had to take a number of core courses in sciences and the arts and writing courses. So those had to be taken anyway. So by the time I decided to switch my major, it wasn't a huge difficulty. In fact, I even was able to study abroad with a program through DePaul University in Indiana, and I actually studied in Vienna for a semester. And that's when I really got my first official orchestral conducting lessons and was encouraged to come back to Vienna and study, which I ultimately did halfway through my graduate studies. So I finished up at Denison, matriculated at Cincinnati Conservatory, had a wonderful experience there. What an incredible place that is in terms of music making and opportunities. And I had a graduate assistantship, so I was rather busy as a student musician. And then I won a Rotary scholarship to go back to Vienna and study for a full year. And when I approached my professors about the possibility of breaking up my graduate studies, he said, "Are you kidding? You have to do this. This is an opportunity that comes once in a lifetime. You have to jump on this." So I did, and I went back to Austria for a full year, followed the complete orchestral conducting course for first-year students, and I loved it. And I didn't have a television the whole year because I was either in the concert halls or I was in the opera every night. And as a student, there's a wonderful opportunity to buy student tickets, standing room tickets. So you can buy a standing room ticket at the State Opera in Vienna for what then was the equivalent of $3 or $3.50. So I mean, it's a no-brainer. I mean, it's such a fun culture because it's either people that that they bring their coffee mugs and they have little seats and they wait in a line with you, or it's students, or it's people from all over the world. And you get to sit, sometimes for an hour and a half, 2 hours, just queuing up, waiting for those tickets. And then when you buy those tickets, you bring a scarf or some kind of cloth with you. So when you buy your ticket, you run to your spot that you want to stand, and you can tie your place off on the railing. And once that spot is tied off on the railing, then that's your spot for the performance. You can run back down to the street and grab something to eat, grab a piece of pizza, get a Coke or something to get you through the next 3.5 hours. And then when you walk back upstairs to your place, it's like the Red Sea parting. I mean, people will really get out of their way and let you walk right back to your spot that you've marked off with your scarf. And I saw my first ring cycle in Vienna. I saw the major Verdi operas. I saw the Vienna Philharmonic rehearse and perform in their beautiful golden concert hall that I imagine a lot of you have seen either personally or on PBS every New Year's Day from that beautiful golden hall that the Vienna Philharmonic plays in. I mean, so that was just as much a part of my training and getting familiar with the repertoire as my coursework was in Vienna, frankly. And then my colleagues and I, it was a great point of discussion. We always talked about the performances during intermissions and the next day and the day after. And it was just really a glorious time of discovery and appreciating what resources are at your disposal in a city like that. So if you've never been to Vienna, my only advice for you is to go during the season. In other words, go between September and first couple weeks of June, because then you'll have access to all the great music making, whether it's the Vienna Philharmonic playing their series or it's the State Opera or any number of great concerts that happen. If you go in the summertime, you're probably going to see, players costumed like Mozart's time, and those concerts are fun, but they're not the authentic concert life that you would see if you would go during the season, as it were, and get a chance to see some really fabulous music making. So that's my only recommendation if you make Vienna a destination in your travels, is that you take advantage of the incredible concert life, because it was a huge factor in my own development as a musician.
Wow. We are so lucky that little 8-year-old Daniel Meyer came into Hoover Auditorium, and then you came back, many years later in your role now. And what a rich wealth of experience and expertise you bring. And we're just excited for the vision, the future of the Lakeside Symphony Orchestra. We're going to jump into a little bit of the history before we start talking about what's coming up this season, because of course, it's part of our commitment, especially as we look at the 150th season, is to honor our cultural heritage, to celebrate our rich heritage and our history. And I'm going to just give you a couple of brief highlights, and then I've asked Shirley to share a little bit about the orchestra during her time with the Lakeside. And then I'm going to ask Daniel maybe what his vision and what the importance for the orchestra is now and moving forward. As we do that, I'd love if you want to drop in the chat, like anything about your first experience hearing the orchestra or a memorable piece, you know, a magical moment. I think for me, last summer, I remember sitting in Hoover Auditorium and came this horrible rainstorm, right? And at the time, then there's also barking dogs and there's people walking by trying to get to their cottages. And there was how a family came in with small children in their pajamas and they're kind of sneaking in going, is this okay? And at the same time, a soloist was on stage giving her heart to the audience and Daniel was conducting and every orchestra member. And to me, the powerful moments of being part of that are just, they're transformational for you personally. So yeah, if you've had a favorite piece, if you've had a favorite experience, drop those in the chat because that'll be really fun to share out with the community here. The orchestra actually, and I do want to say this information, I want to give the source because I know she's on today too, and I so much appreciate her. Ann Schnapp, who is a third generation Lakesider, has been working with the Heritage Society and Dave Bowling and the 150th Committee on compiling the history of the orchestra. And it's in progress, but I really appreciate the work she's done thus far, has provided some just wonderful information. And I just took some tidbits out just to kind of give the lay of the land. So the orchestra, 1963 was when it was first officially established. And actually, I want to I'm going to share my screen here for a moment. Let's see. You see my screen okay? There, perfect. So obviously this is the orchestra as it's going to be in some formation this year, right? But a recent picture of the orchestra here and the season dates there. Let me see if I can just scroll down here for a moment. I got to move. Technology is great. Okay, here we go. It's funny because when I was looking for the history of the orchestra, which actually we have documented is 1963, this is actually one of the photos that comes up, and it's way before 1963. You can see it says orchestra musicians playing for their dinner at the Lakeside Pavilion in 1918. And so this was from the Heritage Society archives. And we know that one of the foundations of the pillars, right, the arts and entertainment, that music has always been there. And it was just a wonderful reminder to say, even though the orchestra, as we know it, began in 1963, the orchestra musicians and the value of symphonic music and classical music were here long before 1963. In 1963, that orchestra was led by conductor William Penny Hacker. It was a group that came from Norfolk, Virginia, and they played in residence at Lakeside, Chautauqua for 3 weeks that summer. The general season over the flow since 1963 has been about 4 weeks. It's ebbed and flows. It's been as long as 6 weeks. It's been as short as 3 weeks. We try to find that balance. And it's also been positioned at Lakeside Chautauqua to come in towards the end of July into the mid-August to also maximize the exposure and engagement of the community. And I think that's one of the really exciting things, as I mentioned, seeing families and kids, all ages, be able to access the orchestra and to not feel, shy about coming in your pajamas. I don't know many other places. I don't know if I can get away with that at Severance Hall, but at Lakeside, we welcome them and we embrace it, which is wonderful. I think it's really interesting when you look at the history of who's played with the Lakeside Symphony Orchestra. Most generally, the musicians, professional musicians, many playing in their hometown orchestras, some in major orchestras. We are so grateful for representation from Cincinnati, from Dayton, from Columbus, Toledo, Pittsburgh. The list goes on. In 1964, there were 14 musicians in the orchestra. This last year, I think we had around 65 or so. It's been about around the time. And I also wanted to share, as we look at the rich history of our musicians, Kathy Bracey, who played harp, was with the orchestra for 52 years, and she has since retired. But what a wonderful legacy. I also wanted to mention over the orchestra's history, some of the exciting people who have performed with the orchestra. Ballet companies are a favorite. In the recent years, Verb Ballets, a professional dance company out of Cleveland, has been coming in and performing with us, and we are so grateful for endowment support, which enables that tradition to continue. Doc Severinsen played with the orchestra in 1972 on the stage of Hoover Auditorium, and we have had multiple guest choirs, including on that list, Daniel Meyer is Singing Angels coming in many years ago, as well as in recent years as well. And the Cleveland Orchestra Chorus as well coming. So a lot of variety of different choruses coming too. One of the longest serving, if not the longest serving music director and conductor has been Bob Cronquist. And so I've asked Shirley if she might share a few minutes about Bob and about her time with the orchestra. And then Bill, I see you have your question asked. And after we do this, before we transition to back to Daniel to tell us a little bit about the orchestra moving forward in the season, I'll call up on you to share. Okay. All right, Shirley, and I'll advance this slide to this one.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. It's always such a pleasure to be on Zoom and see Lakesiders from all over. So thank you for joining us. Many of you know that I joined Lakeside Chautauqua in 2005, and it was during that first summer, mid-July, that Bob Cronquist popped in backstage and introduced himself and said, "I guess we'll be working together for the next few weeks." And that started a great friendship, and I have great admiration for what Bob did through that time. My first thought was how amazing that a community like ours can have a resident symphony for 3 or 4 weeks this summer, and just how would it all come together? And so I sat back, stepped to the side and said, "Bob, tell me what to do and show me how to run with it." Prior to that, kind of my background with symphonies is that I served on the board of the Ashland Symphony Orchestra for 3 years. At that time, it was under the direction of R.A. Lipsky. And I took the position to kind of help with some of the logistics, not really understanding or appreciating classical music. And it was really R.A.'s vision and passion that helped me come to love and appreciate classical music. So I'm forever in debt to him. We are certainly blessed to have Daniel Meyer in the role of our musical director and conductor. As Jeannie said, he guest conducted during our kind of audition season in 2018 and took on the role officially in 2019. I appreciate his artistic vision for the symphony and for being a very, very patient mentor to me. But as Jeannie said, a majority of my years have been under Bob Cronquist. He led the symphony from 1970 to 2017 and was clearly the biggest champion of symphonic music in our community. From the early years on, he handled just about every aspect of the production he had his hands on. And at the time he did that, back in the 70s, there was no one else to help him. And so he kind of kept that throughout his tenure, and it was sometimes hard to take things off his plate. He did it all. And Jeannie, if you could advance to the next slide. Bob was married Joan first in the mid-90s, and Joan is on the left, obviously there. But Bob and Joan were an admirable couple who really took on everything from hiring and paperwork and music library and finding scores and all. And so seeing their commitment to both each other and to the symphony was amazing. Linda Allen was a longtime symphony member who helped a lot with music. Bert Kester served as personnel manager for a while, up until the time he left the symphony. Barb Sovey was a longtime Lakeside employee who would work with Bob on putting some of the paperwork together. So it really was this village of people that helped serve Bob to move this through. He was so dedicated. When I was doing check requests to make sure the symphony members were paid, he would often drop his rate to allow the other musicians to get even a $5 per concert raise. He was so dedicated to that. And I would always say, Bob, don't worry, we'll find the money. I can't make you take a pay cut just to make this production move forward. One of his big goals was to bring ballet, choral works, and even operas, either fully or partially staged, to part of the symphony season. And it was, I think, the third year that I was there that Bob said, I'll need to come in early and measure the space. And I said, for what? And he said, well, the backdrop and the furniture for the opera. And so here comes Bob with the backdrop. He crawls up the ladder to hang it. And I thought, we have to help figure out how to do this so we don't lose our conductor with a ladder accident or something. But that was just the way Bob worked through things. Probably not the best model for succession planning, but definitely something that I appreciate his hard work. On the right there, you'll see a picture of Bob or Gavin George hugging Bob. Bob was such a champion of young performers. He brought many in from the Cleveland Institute of Music and other schools throughout the state. But this particular picture I remember fondly as one of my favorite moments. Gavin performed beautifully in rehearsal, and then about 3 minutes at the beginning of his concerto, got terrible stage fright. I mean, terrible, to the point we had to delay the concert about 3 or 4 minutes. And so I'm in the stage right wing, slightly panicking and wondering how we would move on without the guest soloist. And Gavin walked out and he said, do you have a towel? And I said, yes. And I handed it to Gavin and he said, great, I might need it. So he took the towel and set it next to him on the floor in case something bad were to occur. And he played beautifully and jumped up off the piano bench and hugged Bob. And I thought that right there is a great photo of him really mentoring and bringing young people through, much like Daniel does. I think he has a beautiful flair for finding young talent, and they love to play for him. So, Jean, you can go back to me live on the screen now.
Okay, perfect.
But it's really the musicians that are the heart of the symphony. And I did want to say that, John Ross helped in the year of transition, but so many people helped make our symphony what it is today. And a side note, that Daniel was hired in 2019, got us a fairly normal transition year in, and then was hit by COVID. And so he has been working so hard and waiting patiently, and really we're allowing now his artistic vision just to kind of roll forward. But I think 2023 will be a very exciting year to come. Yeah. So thanks, Jeannie, for letting me throw in my 2 cents.
Oh my goodness, Shirley, thank you so much. It's funny, as I mentioned, I worked for the Columbus Symphony Orchestra as their director of education. So I understood the structure of what it took to get that orchestra on stage and then to see those concerts happen. And when I came and was part of my first season last year working with Shirley, my eyes were about this wide watching as Shirley navigated with her grace and her effort and her perseverance. Everything from getting the repertoire and the music out to hiring, to payroll, to travel. I mean, she was doing the job of about 5 different people from my experience in the orchestra. And like Shirley does everything else, she does it amazingly. So it's just a gift to have her part of this. And I enjoyed learning and watching last year. And I feel a little bit more like I've got a little bit solid foundation to help a little bit more this summer. So grateful for that. I also want to say thank you so much for people sharing in the chat, everything from their son's interest in classical music due directly to the Lakeside Symphony Orchestra. And I've heard these kinds of stories where it's kind of like you take a child into the orchestra and say, we can leave at intermission. However, you just don't, right? It just becomes part of like, wow, those wow moments that have instilled and provided a love of symphonic music. Also about going to the orchestra, going to hear the Lakeside Symphony Orchestra when you were 10 years old. Younger brothers would fall asleep during the concerts. It's magical and soothing, and we all need a little bit of that peace and tranquility. And sometimes orchestra music does do that. And then thanks for sharing that Dad played cello in the orchestra for 49 years. And Bill Smith shared that their 3 who are now in their 50s still remember them taking to the symphony in their pajamas. So it's just amazing, the memories and the connections and the experiences. And with that, Daniel, would you talk a little bit about what your vision, kind of like what is the importance of the orchestra today and then moving forward here at Lakeside?
Sure. It's piggybacking a little bit off of what you said earlier in our meeting today, in that the great thing about Lakeside and the fact that the Lakeside Symphony thrives at Lakeside is that it's a special thing, but it's a normal thing. It's something that, we should in some regards be able to take for granted, but obviously we don't, because there's so many things that have to go into making the Lakeside Symphony thrive and survive summer to summer. But what I love about it is, yes, it's symphony night. Everybody has dinner. They walk over, they bring their golf carts, and they come in, and maybe they'll sit in lawn chairs out on the side and listen as the music wafts out onto the lawn. Maybe they'll come in their flip-flops or their pajamas, and maybe some of the kids will fall asleep halfway through. But what I love about it is, as special as a symphony concert is, it's normal to go to the symphony at Lakeside. And I always think, I always walk by people while I'm there and engage in conversations, and even at poolside, it's just so fun because people speak of it as if that it's just a quintessential part of their Lakeside experience, and that makes me smile. It makes me happy. It almost seems almost too good to be true, but it is true at Lakeside, and that's one of the things that I think is really important for me to espouse and to make sure that it thrives for many years to come, is that symphonic music is for everyone. It's for kids, it's for adults, it's for young adults. The great thing about Lakeside is that there isn't the pressure of, you just had a really long work week and it's Friday night and you're exhausted. And if you haven't already bought your tickets or you hadn't already subscribed, you're likely to stay home and put your slippers on, right? And just relax. But everybody's already relaxed at Lakeside. So, they're looking for opportunities to be stimulated and to engage with our wonderful artists and our musicians. And part of my vision also is to bring the finest guest soloists that we can muster. Mm-hmm. And sometimes that means cajoling, sometimes it means begging, sometimes Shirley is elegant at saying, I just might be able to find a very special place for you and your family to stay during your time here, to make it, to kind of value add. I know we're not going to be able to pay your regular fee that you would be paid by the Detroit Symphony or by the Chicago Symphony, but we'll find a way to make this a really special opportunity for you and for your family. And that's what makes this special, and makes us, frankly, able to bring in some artists that really are world class and are commanding really high fees everywhere else they go. But they take a discount because they want to work with us, and they want to be at Lakeside. So that's a special thing. And I'll talk a little bit about some of those artists coming soon. But just to finish up this idea of vision for an orchestra at Lakeside, it's also very similar to the one that you delineated with Bob, which is to say that symphonic music is important to our lives. We should be inviting ballet companies to come and collaborate with us. There should be some element of choral music or operatic music. All of those things are in discussion. And as Shirley said, as part of the pandemic, we had some really wonderful plans that were shaping up very nicely over the next 3-4 years. And wow, talk about shutting a garage door on your dreams and your plans, at least for a couple of years. But boy, do we retooled as quickly as we could and tried to mount as much of a season and as much classical music as we could do over those few seasons that we were living with the pandemic. Mm-hmm. And now that we're back to something a little bit more normal, we're really thrilled about getting back into some of our plans for the future. And I think there's some pretty exciting things that are coming down the pike that I think people will resonate with, and will continue this idea that having a symphony at Lakeside is normal, and it's wonderful, and it's something we should celebrate and be excited about, but also I think we're allowed to take it for granted because it's just so wonderful, and the arts are such a vital part of the Lakeside experience.
Mm-hmm. Daniel, so well said. And you capture it just beautifully within the spirit of Lakeside. And I think within the context of the Lakeside community and the mission of Lakeside, et cetera. So I'm going to share my screen again here in just a minute and ask that we start looking at the season.
Sure.
Let me see, I might have to open this up. As I pull this up, Daniel, can you tell us a little bit about, how do you go about selecting the repertoire? What is that process as you start the process of being the music director before you get to be the conductor?
Right. Well, that's the two natures to my job. One is the artistic planner, which is to say, I'm always looking for the ingredients that will make up a great concert, and I'm looking for great guest artists, and I'm projecting to the future what kind of orchestra we're going to need in order to play those pieces. I'm also the chef. In other words, I'm taking all these ingredients and turning them into menus, and those menus then constitute each individual concert experience that we have, and then ultimately constitute an entire season. And in a professional orchestra, you're spreading your season out over 7, 8, 9, 10 months in a year. And at Lakeside, we're compacting it into sometimes 3 mega wonderful and intense weeks of music making and rehearsals and production schedule, which is kind of flabbergasting, and Shirley is amazing in what she's able to do, and not only in helping us plan and implement the season, but then once it's up and running, there's no time to smell the roses. I mean, we're 24/7 making sure that each new concert experience and believe me, as much as we plan, there are always detours along the way, whether it's musicians not being able to come or getting sick, or we have to make a last minute replacement, or something happened at the library, we don't have the right part. I mean, there's so many strange things that pop up over the course of a 3-week symphonic season, and believe me, we have such a great team assembled that we're able to handle those things when they come our way. But ultimately, our job is to make sure that what happens on the stage is wonderful, and there's no hint of any of what might have happened to get to that particular point.
It truly is amazing. And being a person who does work behind the scenes, or hearing like, hey, there's an artist that had to, cancel within 48 hours, right? A soloist. And how are we going to fill this and change repertoire and get the music to the musicians and then rehearse that music, right? And then make it go live. It just is amazing. Not to mention, some of the things we look for in the season, from the family concert to the pops concert to, other repertoire to the ballet, how that all comes together. So let me see here. Let's start walking through the season here and start talking about this 150th year. So Daniel, if you could help us walk through our first concert we're going to open up with is this family concert on Thursday, July 27th at 7 p.m. Tell us more.
Well, this is fun because, normally when I program a family concert, I'm thinking it's going to be parents or grandparents bringing their kids. And it is, but at Lakeside, it's anybody who wants to experience the symphony. They just show up. They don't mind that it's going to be geared towards kids. They just love hearing the orchestra and love hearing the music. So I keep that in mind too when I'm putting these concerts together. But I always try to organize them around a central theme. And this year it's going to be called Our Amazing Earth. So all of the music on the program is devoted to what makes our planet Earth so special. And in particular, what do we need to do to make sure that it stays healthy and that we're able to make use of this planet for many, many years to come. So there's a bit of an environmental bent to this program as well. So we have a guest artist that comes, a guest cellist that's going to come and perform. She's going to be playing a concerto, and you're not going to believe the name of this concerto, but it's called Watershed. And it was written by a Pittsburgh-based composer, and her name is Lynn Peirce, and she wrote an entire concerto for cello and orchestra based on this whole idea of conservation and the flow of water from mountaintops and through tributaries and through rivers, and making their way all the way to their final destination. So this whole idea of the water cycle and watersheds is actually built into the music making. We also will have a guest scientist who will come and talk to us about how important our place is on Lake Erie, what an important resource the Great Lakes are as freshwater lakes. We'll be talking about that, and then we'll be pairing that up with different pieces of music. One piece is by Alan Hovhaness called Mount St. Helens. He wrote an entire symphony based on the famous explosion of Mount St. Helens volcano. We'll talk about what kind of ramifications that had on the earth. We'll play Debussy's La Mer, music from, about the sea. We'll perform music by Finnish composer Rautavaara. He wrote this beautiful concerto for bird song, Arctic birds and orchestra. It's called Cantus Arcticus. So we'll play some music for that, and that involves recorded Arctic bird song, and then that's played while the orchestra plays as well. So it's a pretty fascinating piece. We'll also play This Land Is Your Land as a sing-along for everybody in the audience to sing along. We'll play some music from Jurassic Park by John Williams. So small bites, but all organized around a central theme, and particularly a prescient theme considering our place on the shore of Lake Erie.
Oh my goodness, this is gonna be so fun. And we'll also, the concert starts at 7 p.m. Pajamas welcome. And at 6 o'clock, we'll have hands-on activities for the kids in Hoover Auditorium lobby. Those will include a musical petting zoo where we can try out a variety of different instruments as well. And then some arts and crafts activities that will introduce and extend their symphonic music experience. So it's gonna be fabulous. All right, let's talk about that Pops concert. Less than 24 hours later, right? Again, when you think about the transitions that happens here, it's a wild ride during this week. So the Pops concert, what's going to be happening Friday night, July 28th, 7:30 p.m.
This is a good friend of mine. His name is Scott Coulter, and he's a Broadway singer and a producer. And he has his finger on the pulse of all the wonderful artists in Broadway today. He assembles his own teams, and he handpicks the artists that come and perform with him. And this one is all based on the great British knights. And when I say that, I'm saying Sir Paul McCartney, Sir Andrew Lloyd Webber, and Sir Elton John. So all three of those major British artists who have all been knighted as a tribute to their amazing careers, musical careers. All of their music will be featured on this one night. Now, we won't have any of those three, unfortunately, in attendance, but the vocalists and the musicians that we'll be bringing for that concert are wonderful. You are going to really enjoy the way that they put this program together. I've actually performed this concert with my own orchestra before, and the audience just ate it up. They really loved this combination of those three great artists and their signature songs all in one evening, and with the beautiful arrangements that were made for the Lakeside Symphony. I think we'll make for a really fun night.
Oh my goodness, it's going to be an incredible night. I can't wait. Let's switch gears here because just a few days later, we've got a full week planned. So feel free to talk about any of these, all of them. We are looking forward to learning a little more.
So Maxime Lando is a superb young American-born and based pianist. He's actually based in New York City. I believe he's still studying at the Juilliard School right now. He's really young. I think he's still in his early 20s. I first collaborated with him when he was only 19 years old. Superb pianist. He and I think we've already collaborated 3 or 4 times before, but he wants to come and play the Brahms First Piano Concerto at Lakeside. And I said, absolutely, we'd love to have you come and do that. So he's going to perform that on the same program that we're going to be performing Howard Hanson's Romantic Symphony. That's his Symphony number 2. I have a special place in my heart for a particular era of American composers and American music from the 50s and 60s. Sometimes they're called the neo-tonalists, which means that they write in a style that wouldn't have been foreign to Tchaikovsky or Dvorak, just in a very American idiom. So Howard Hanson certainly fits that bill, and this is probably his most famous symphonic work, his Symphony number 2, and the Romantic, I think, best applies to the slow movement, which I think a lot of people would recognize upon hearing that. But that's Maxime Lando playing Brahms and the orchestra performing Howard Hanson on the second half.
Wow, sounds perfect. And again, we jumped 2 more days, another full concert.
Right. Timothy Chewy is a rising star in the violin world. His first professional job was, if I'm not mistaken, I think he was concertmaster of the Buffalo Philharmonic. Spent a couple years in that position, but his solo career started getting so active that he decided that he would just give up that standing gig and become a soloist. And he's been touring the world. Just made an important debut at the Royal Liverpool Philharmonic. He's an artist that I've wanted to work with for a long time and just haven't had the chance yet. And it worked out beautifully in the summer schedule for him to come to Lakeside. So we're inviting him to come, and he's going to be performing Bruch's Scottish Fantasy, which, if you know that piece, it's a beautiful kind of storytelling and uses authentic Scottish folk tunes as part of the music, but it's a beautifully woven violin concerto type of piece. And that same program will share with music of Grieg from his famous Peer Gynt suites. If you know In the Hall of the Mountain King or Morning Mood, you already know some of the music from the Peer Gynt suite. We're going to create a full symphonic length set of music from the two suites, the two concert suites that were extracted from that music. And then another really fun aspect of this concert will be the introduction, and this is a new thing to the Lakeside Symphony Orchestra, a resident string quartet. We're inviting the Baio String Quartet to come and reside at Lakeside over the course of our residency together. And they will be performing and rehearsing, and you'll probably see them on the street side. You might see them on in a recital, but you'll also see them in the fabric of the Lakeside Symphony. So this is really special because you've got four superb professional musicians who live and make their living as a string quartet. They're going to be in residence at Lakeside and performing on their own and within the fabric of the Lakeside Symphony over the course of the season. We're going to be giving them their Hoover debut at this concert. They'll be playing a work on their own in the center of the concert. So we'll start with the Peer Gynt suite, then we'll have the Baio Quartet play a Haydn or a Mozart quartet, and then we'll finish up the evening with Timothy Chewy playing this wonderful Scottish fantasy by Max Bruch.
Wonderful. All right, tell us what's coming up on Tuesday, August the 8th.
Kate Lee, another wonderful pianist. She was on faculty at Cincinnati Conservatory for a number of years, but she just switched to the Juilliard School. So now she's one of the principal teachers at the Juilliard School on their piano faculty there, but she's also an international artist who solos with orchestras all over the world. I've had the great pleasure of collaborating with her before, and actually she was supposed to come to Lakeside this past summer and she fell ill, and we had to replace her at the very last moment with David Allen Ware, who came and played a beautiful Mozart concerto. But we missed out on getting the chance to hear her play Rachmaninoff's second. So she's going to come back and play Rachmaninoff's second piano concerto as kind of the featured work on this particular program. We're going to pair this program up with a Pittsburgh-based composer. Her name is Nancy Galbraith, and she wrote a wonderful piece called Tormenta del Sur. We'll start with that, and then we're going to perform William Grant Still's wonderful Afro-American Symphony. It's his Symphony No. 1, which, if you've never heard it before, if you know the music of Gershwin, you'll think, oh, this is right in the same league, right in the same vein with that great music. So in fact, Still beat Gershwin to the punch. This particular symphony predates Rhapsody in Blue, and I think you'll hear some things in this symphony that really remind you of some of the great blues and beautiful American styles of music that were incorporated into this particular symphony. So music by a living American composer, another American composer who was perhaps the foremost African-American composer in American history, and then we'll finish it up with this incredible and beloved Russian romantic piano concerto, Rachmaninoff's second, performed by Soyeon Kate Lee.
Wow. And then as we conclude the official symphony orchestra season, we're going to bring back Verb Ballets. Tell us a little bit more about maybe what's in the works with Verb Ballets.
Well, what I love about Verb, they're also called the Ohio Contemporary Ballet, is that they are just as interested and capable in dancing in a classical vein, like Swan Lake and Nutcracker and Giselle, as they are in performing Martha Graham or any contemporary kind of. So they're kind of an interesting ballet company in that they don't limit themselves to one particular style or genre of dancing, but they really embrace all of them. And I think you're going to get a flavor for that when they return to Lakeside, because we're choosing works that are modern, but also have very classical bents. There's a beautiful choreographed version of Strauss's Four Last Songs, which those of you who know the music of Richard Strauss know that this is one of those beautiful final works that Strauss ever wrote in his career. And it's scored for solo soprano and ballet company. So we'll be performing that. We'll also be performing music of Glazunov from his Seasons, and also a wonderful choreographed version of music of Shostakovich, the Russian composer. He wrote a concertino for two solo pianos that later was turned into a piece for orchestra. And they'll be dancing to the orchestrated version of that concertino. And if you're interested, you can probably find a few recordings of the original on YouTube. It's Opus 94, but this will be just as fascinating to hear the Lakeside Symphony play the orchestrated version. So no pianos, just orchestra, but with Verb Ballet dancing, an absolutely captivating choreography to that. So a real mix of music, a real mix of styles. And what I love about Maggie Carlson and Richard Dickinson and the Verb Ballet is that there's such happy collaborators. They love working with our orchestra. The dance, it's so fun. Shirley can attest to this. As soon as the dancers come off stage, they're absolutely thrilled because they don't always get to perform with a live orchestra. And it makes a huge difference when dancers and musicians can work in synergy and can play off of each other's energies. And I mean, to dance to live music is the pinnacle for any classically trained or any trained ballet dancer.
I don't know about you guys, but I have goosebumps listening to what is coming up this season. Daniel, your vision that you have created, and how you and Shirley have worked through the logistics to bring this together. Just thank you. We are so excited. As we start to wind down today's program, I did want to also ask, though, when Shirley and you and I met last on the Plaza, Walnut Plaza, we sat down last year and talked about one of the things we were talking about, is where the orchestra season is, right? And how we also want to make sure that we can extend and make sure symphonic music is accessible. And how would that work? How would that function, right? Because we hire orchestra musicians. And we're so lucky that you also serve as the artistic director of Blue Water Chamber Orchestra here out of Cleveland, Ohio. And so the stars have aligned, and you're going to be coming a little earlier this season, coming out on, I think it's Friday, June 23rd.
That's right.
Blue Water. Can you tell us a little bit about what to expect with that program?
Well, Blue Water Chamber Orchestra is a chamber orchestra made up of the finest freelancers in Cleveland. And as you can imagine, there's some pretty incredible musicians. And we even actually have musicians from the Cleveland Orchestra that play in the chamber orchestra from time to time. But largely, it's also musicians that also play in the ballet pit or play in the opera pit or service faculty at Cleveland Institute of Music or at Baldwin Wallace or Oberlin Conservatory or any or Cleveland State, any of the number of fine music schools in and around Northeast Ohio. So it's a pretty wonderful orchestra, and we're going to be bringing a program of Mendelssohn's Scottish Symphony, is Symphony number 3, and we're also going to be performing a beautiful work for solo cello and orchestra by Ina Boyle. I wonder if any of you have ever even heard this name before. She's actually an Irish composer who was a mentee of Ralph Vaughan Williams and some of the other fine English composers from that particular era. And she's going to be playing this we're going to be hearing this lovely work called Elegy by Ina Boyle, and that's on the very same program. And some other lovely English pastoral music. So I think it's going to make a nice introduction, and it will come earlier in the season, of course, too. So this will be an interesting chance to gauge how many people that are coming in late June that are still that have an enthusiasm for what's happening in the orchestral scene. And I'm just thrilled to be able to share this orchestra with the Lakeside audience because I think it's a really special group, and I know they're going to love to come to Lakeside too. It's going to be definitely a mutually beneficial debut for this orchestra at this particular festival.
Well, we are just thrilled that, again, the stars aligned for that to happen. And I know one thing that Shirley's really been thoughtful about this season too is, I mean, she looks at all the different genres, all the different groups that come to Lakeside, but I think it goes back to what you started with, Daniel, which was about how the orchestra, it's so accessible. Symphonic music, it's such a part of who we are, who we have been, and we want to continue to grow that. So having Blue Water come in early June, having then this phenomenal concert series lined up, having the addition of the string quartet, who will be doing some pop-up stuff and some other programming throughout their time with us, it really truly is going to be just a sensational 150th of season. One comment that just dropped in the chat is if there's a synchronized film orchestra performance in the cards. That's been something I know. Actually, Daniel, you were out in Toledo Symphony, right, with Mary Poppins recently. Anything like that possible for Lakeside in the future?
That's a real trend right now in the orchestral world, is to feature full feature films with your orchestra playing the soundtrack live in real time with the film. And well, as Anne can, I'm sure, attest, it's a really challenging thing to do. It's a really expensive thing to do. The price tag for these are enormous, particularly if they're coming from the John Williams, Steven Spielberg, George Lucas, Disney realm. So it would take some special fundraising in order to pull that off. But I am of the opinion that the Lakeside Symphony is certainly fine enough to be able to do justice to some of these wonderful films. So that's definitely something that is under consideration, and we'll certainly try to make that happen in the next couple seasons. The other thing I wanted to mention, Jeannie, while I have the floor, is that we're also looking to incorporate choral elements into what we present at Lakeside too. And part of that is a matter of logistics, and part of it is also a matter of finance as well. But we're looking to get some really big, beautiful choral works back at Lakeside, like the Mozart Requiem or the Verdi Requiem or Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, or anything with a big chorus, maybe even some Bach. You just never know. We're certainly looking into incorporating choral elements and getting that back into the Hoover Auditorium as well.
Perfect. Daniel, the answer doesn't have to be the orchestra. What are you looking forward to as you return to Lakeside Chautauqua this summer?
Oh, I just love how my blood pressure drops as soon as I get inside the gates. And believe me, it's a working vacation for me, right? I mean, almost every moment of my time at Lakeside is thinking about rehearsals or doing rehearsals or thinking about the next or performing concerts. It's definitely a whirlwind from my perspective, but for the sake of my family, and it's funny, I see my brothers and sisters and parents way more at Lakeside than I do throughout the year, and I think that's partially thanks to the fact that it's such a special place and a place that people want to be and want to share special family time. So that's the thing I look forward to most, is just the beautiful, relaxed atmosphere, the supportive community, the audience that loves what we do, and will stop and say hello and say thank you the morning after a concert, whether I'm in the donut line or I'm just walking along the most beautiful mile in Ohio. And it's a wonderful atmosphere, and I think it's kind of the totality of the experience that I look forward to every year. And frankly, I think that our musicians do as well.
Wow. Well said. And we're so grateful that your family is able to join you at Lakeside. It's just been a wonderful gift to our community, both having you and your family with us. And so thank you again for sharing this time with us today. It is insightful, it is inspiring, and it just brings more energy and enthusiasm to our 150th year at Lakeside Chautauqua. So thank you very much. And to everyone here today, thank you very much. Thanks to you guys, we have I think it's like over 600 unique registrations, over 1,800 total registrations for Lakeside Online. This is something we're piloting this year. Of course, with the 150th, it's a great time to try new things. It's a great time for us to think about how do we keep year-round programming going, based on where Lakesiders are and what their needs are. I will be sending out an email following the program. It will have a link to a survey. We really appreciate your feedback on that. It will help us serve you better. Moving forward this summer, we are planning to live stream 5 of our keynotes coming up, and you'll be learning more about that. And next year, we're planning on continuing Lakeside Online. That will include some of these special programs and the Power of the Pillar. A couple of final reminders. This Wednesday, March 1st at 7:30 p.m. begins the Lenten study. Again, these programs are free to everyone. You do not have to be a Lakesider to join us. Please feel free to share them with your friends, your family, your church, etc. So March 1st does begin the Lenten study. That will be Reverend Dr. Charlie Yost, as well as Michael Schertz will be joining him and some other guests. And then next Monday, March 6th at 7 p.m., we have another book discussion coming up, and that will be Dr. Catherine Sullivan's Handprints on Hubble. Dr. Kathy Sullivan was the first woman to walk in space. She worked on the Hubble telescope, and then she's also been to the depths of the ocean and the trench. So lots of things coming up. All right. And with that, it is 3:59. It is that time of day. We hope you enjoy a wonderful Sunday afternoon with your family. And we appreciate again you joining us today. And we look forward to seeing you at Lakeside. All right. Bye, guys.
Thanks, everybody.